Hey everyone, Ape Analytics, back for more. This is video number 2 of my Python for Analytics series. It's so nice to see you again. The topic of the day, Booleans, basic logical operators, and if statements. Put together, these three things allow you to build conditions and tell Python to act differently, whether these conditions are true or false. Pretty useful. We have a Jupyter notebook open on the screen. I recommend you use Jupyter, but you don't have to. You can check out my previous video if you want to find out how to install it on your machine. First off, let's talk about Booleans, which is just a fancy way of referring to something that is either true or false. Before we actually get started, just a quick reminder of the difference between the simple equal sign and the double equal sign in Python. The simple equal sign is used to assign a value to a variable. For instance, n equals 5, then I can print n, and that gives me 5. The double equal sign is different. It's used for comparisons. An example would be, is 1 the same as 0? The answer is false. This is a way to generate Booleans. We can check, for instance, is 1 the same as 1? The answer is true. But there are many kinds of comparisons that you can perform. For instance, is 1 greater than 0? The answer is true. Is 1 smaller or equal to 1? The answer is true. These are just examples of comparisons you can perform, and these comparisons will be either true or false. Before we move on to the next section, a quick trick on the house. Python is full of these little cool things. If I do true plus true plus false, you're going to tell me, you're crazy, Ape Analytics. That doesn't make any sense. And yet, if I run it in Python, it's going to give me 2. The reason is, in the background, true is 1 and false is 0, and I can add them up just like I would add up normal numbers. This may sound a bit crazy and silly at this stage, but we'll see in future videos that it can be quite useful. Now that we know what Booleans are, we can move on to logical operators, so things like and, or, not. These connectors allow you to form conditions, such as this number is greater than 5 and that word contains at least one vowel. Let's take a look at a few examples. And first. You can have something like 1 is greater than 1 and 1 is equal to 1. This is false because 1 is not strictly greater than 1. Let's do something similar but with or this time. 1 is greater than 1 or 1 is equal to 1. This is true because although 1 is not greater than 1 strictly, 1 is equal to 1. So one of these things is true, therefore or is true. Not is pretty straightforward. Not 1 is strictly greater than 1, as we know this is false, is going to evaluate to true, because the opposite of false is true. Now that we know what Booleans and logical operators are, we can move on to if statements. An if statement is a very powerful thing to have in your toolkit. The syntax is pretty straightforward. You start with if, followed by your condition. For instance, Dumbledore is in the house. Then you add a column. And then, on the next line, after one tab or 4 spaces, you add whatever action you want Python to perform. For instance, drop the base. The indentation is fundamental in Python. It's not like other programming languages, such as SQL. I think that's why I love Python so much, and that's also why a lot of people hate Python, actually, because if your code doesn't look nice, it's not going to run. That was the theory. Let's make some if examples in practice. I'm going to start with a variable n, and in there I'm going to put the value 5. If n is greater than 0, column, Jupyter automatically adds the tab because it recognized the if statement. I'm going to write some action. Print n is positive. You see? If I change that 5 to a 0, nothing happens because the condition n is strictly greater than 0 is false. That's why we can add another component to our if statement called else. And if I run this, it returns n is not positive because n is not strictly greater than 0 in that case. It's equal to 0. But we can take this one step further. I'm going to copy what we've already written and paste that into the next cell. And in between the if and the else, I'm going to add the elif component. The elif is kind of a sub-if. It's basically an if that you add within an if. And that elif requires a condition. So I can say, for instance, n is strictly smaller than 0, followed by a column. You know the drill. I'm going to write down print n is negative. And I'm going to modify my else to catch the other case, which is n is null. And let's run this. You see, when n is equal to 0, my if returns n is null. But if I were to change that to -9, it returns n is negative. The great thing about elifs is that you can add as many as you want. I could have added a lot more cases to my if. So there you have it, folks. You know all about Booleans, logical operators, and if statements. As always, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment to let me know what you think and would like to see next.